Hi there, we are continuing our read aloud of Medicine Walk by Ardith Mayer. Yesterday we finished chapter 6 where Burr Henderson made it out of the chimney rock. He didn't fall, he didn't die, he did make it out, but as he is now out, he still has a lot more desert to cover before he reaches civilization, hopefully. And he also has some wild animals such as the cougar, and other things like rattlesnakes or other things and bad terrain that he has to cross. So let's see what happens to Burr Henderson in his journey. We will begin chapter 7, called Toughing It. It was afternoon, around 2, I thought from examining the angle of the sun. My watch hadn't survived the scraping it had got in the shaft, so I couldn't be certain. I missed knowing what time it was. Not that it would have done me any good anyway. I remembered Ch7's scorn for white men's fixation on watches and clocks. Do you make a day a minute longer by knowing the time? What is it this time that you know? Is it not the rock's time or the sun's time or the chipmunk's time? It is a thing that the white man has made up. He uses it to control his fellows. It is no good to anyone who lives by the world as it is. As I rose and moved along the top of the cliff, I thought about that, Ch7's words. It's true, you know. Here I had no school to go to, no doctor or dentist who would have me in his office at the precise time he'd scheduled for me. Here time might not exist at all, just day and night, cold and hot, wet and dry, mostly dry. As I struggled among the rocks and ridges, I felt that I had lived for years and years since the minute when I knew Dad was sick. I was so much older now than I had been then at my 12th birthday. Might have been years instead of days behind me. There was a path leading back into skimpy trees. I followed it, watching now where I put my feet. The sun was hot and the snakes would be moving. Rattlers. If they were fast like the first, they'd be big ones. This mesa was almost bald on top, like Grandpa. The upper part had looked smooth as a table from the top of the opposite ridge, but it was uneven, gullied, and stony. The sun was terrible, and the effort of walking made me even hotter. I wish that I had waited among the pinyons at the canyon's edge until the sun went lower. It would have been cooler, and I'd have made better time without taking the risk of giving myself a heat stroke. I stopped beside an upthrust of rock and took out the water bottle. Not to drink. I had pretty good control of that now. Instead, I put a tiny bit of water on my handkerchief hat, squeezed it together, dampening the whole thing somewhat. When I replaced it, the breeze made by my motion evaporated the water, and my head was cooler. It was a relief while it lasted, and I trudged onward. But I knew I was overheating. A reddish mist was rising behind my eyes. A couple of days before, I'd have dropped down to the gritty mesa top and just screamed, "I can't go another step!" And I'd have meant it, and it would have been true. But now I was someone else, someone who didn't think of stopping. There was nothing to stop for. I couldn't die here and now, or I couldn't keep going and die trying. That reminded me of Dad. I could hear his voice. I'll do that, or I'll die trying. Now I knew what Dad had meant. He was that kind of man. He had died trying. I thought maybe that original moment in the plane would have killed an ordinary man, one who didn't have the will to save his only son. That was what a man did, or a woman. Mom hadn't been a bit different. That was what real people did. Kept on and on, no matter what. Now, I might be able to prove to Ch7 that I was as strong and as determined as his people. Not that the old man would ever know. Or would he? I thought about that as I put one foot ahead of the other. Maybe he would. He had his ways, Nachito. Even other Apache looked at him with awe when one of his predictions turned out to be right on the button. I listened to the rock. I listened to the wind. I listened to the plants. They tell me things nobody else can hear, for no one else listens. He used to say, maybe these rocks and the few bushes and the wind might carry word to him about how Burr Henderson died. I shook myself, and the red haze lessened a little. I'd been walking along in a daze or a dream. I'd been hallucinating, I thought. Heat and exhaustion could cause that. I wasn't a doctor's son for nothing. I'd forgotten to eat again, too. I stopped in the middle of the stride and looked up at the sun. A crazy impulse made me shout at the burning shield in the sky. What should I do? Just tell me, and I'll do it. Okay, tell me I'm crazy. Tell me I was hallucinating. The breeze whispered right into my ears. Rest. In 20 more steps, I found myself staring down into a deep gully. The sun was down far enough so that one side of it was in a shadow. It looked as deep and dark as a black hole. I looked up toward the sun and then down into that refuge. Thanks, I croaked. I scrambled down the cleft and leaned against the rock. It was cooler than the air. Just to be out of the sun was wonderful, too. I sipped one swallow of water, chewed on a few raisins, and they were hard to swallow, for my throat wasn't wet enough, but I managed without taking any more water. Then I sat and leaned, closing my eyes and letting my mind relax. I could feel my backbone grating against the stone. I'd lost a lot of weight. All that climbing and walking would have done that, even with enough water and food. I dug into the bag I still closed and pulled out half of an apricot. Not many left. Few raisins were left either. When those were gone, then what? I chewed the bits of apricot and the raisins slowly, savoring every scrap. 20 times I chewed each bite, playing the game Mom had taught me when I was little. But everything was gone too soon, and when I put the bag into a cranny in the rock, I intended to sleep, even if it meant that I'd never wake up again. With some sleep, I might be able to walk a good long way in the night hours. Snakes or no snakes, the sun was more dangerous. I didn't know I'd been asleep until I woke again. The cougar roused me as its growly screech echoed among the cliffs on either side. It brought me to my feet before I was more than half awake. It was fully and completely dark. After midnight, the waning moon was halfway up to the east. Not a lot of light, but enough to help. Maybe I could manage to keep my sense of direction with the moon in the east. I couldn't believe that I'd still be alive and moving when the sun rose. I pulled out the water bottle, my hand moving so slowly it made me impatient. I took a mouthful of water and held it. Its coolness soothed my raw mouth and tongue, but I didn't swallow. It helped me to get started walking through the shadowy night. That is the end of chapter 7. We will pick up chapter 8 on Monday. I hope you guys have a great and wonderful weekend and that you've had a tremendous spring break. Love to you all. Bye-bye.